Picture this. It's the middle of the 19th century. Two French missionaries are about to set off on a journey that's, well, it's pretty much impossible. They're going to try and cross some of the most brutal landscapes on the planet to reach a city that's completely closed off to the world, Lhasa, the forbidden heart of Tibet. So let's get right into this absolutely incredible story of faith, danger, and what it really means to discover something new.
These are the words of Évariste Huc, one of our adventurers. He and his friend, Joseph Gabet, just stepped out of China and into the unknown. What hits you right away about this quote is that feeling of being completely and utterly on your own. This wasn't some guided tour on a marked trail, you know? This was a plunge into a world that almost no one from the West had ever laid eyes on.
So what was the plan exactly? Well, at first it was to set up a mission out in Mongolia. But as they traveled, they kept hearing the same thing from the local lamas. All spiritual roads, they said, lead to one place, Lhasa. And Huc became convinced it was, in his words, the very Rome of Buddhism. Suddenly, the goal wasn't just some remote outpost anymore. It was the absolute center of this faith they were trying to understand.
Okay, so they weren't totally alone. They had Samda Chiemba, their guide, and Huck's description of him is just fantastic. He's not just one thing, he's this mix of all the cultures of the region. And I love that word Huck uses, knavery, to describe his Chinese side. It's like a cleverness, a bit of a trickster vibe. It just goes to show Samda Chiemba wasn't just leading the way, he was a living, breathing map of the complicated world they were walking into.
All right, let's get into the journey itself, because their first great obstacle wasn't a mountain or a frozen river. It was an ocean of grass, the Mongolian prairies. This landscape was so huge, so empty, it basically became another character in their story, and it really started to work on their minds.
I just love this quote. Huck really nails that feeling you get when you're in a place that's just massive, just immense. It's not about being happy or sad. It's something else, a kind of quiet, spiritual feeling that just makes you stop and think about your own tiny place in the world. See, this was more than just a trip. It was a pilgrimage, right from the very start. And out in all this emptiness, they'd come across these little flashes of life. One minute, the prairie is buzzing with nomadic families, tents everywhere, people working, animals grazing, and the next, poof, gone. Huck says it all vanished in the twinkling of an eye. The only thing left behind was a few embers from their fires and some bones. And the reason they'd leave so suddenly was so simple. The grass was gone. It's just a wild reminder of how life out there was completely attuned to the rhythm of nature. But this journey was no peaceful meditation, not by a long shot. Once they got up onto the high plateaus, they were facing two constant deadly threats: the sheer violence of the weather and the organized violence of other people. Just staying alive was a daily fight. This is honestly one of the strangest encounters in the whole book. They run into bandits, but it's not some chaotic, violent ambush. Instead, it's this incredibly formal, almost polite request. "Excuse me, sir, could you lend me your horse and your wallet?" The threat is definitely there, underneath it all, but it's wrapped in this bizarrely courteous language. It just shows you this was a world with its own set of rules, even for robbery. Nature, on the other hand, was not polite at all. Huck describes this one storm in the desert, and it's just pure terror. It's not just rain, it's hail, snow, and sand all at once. The ground beneath them basically turns to quicksand. All they could do was huddle next to their camels, totally exposed, and just hope to survive it. And just to give you an idea of the kind of storms we're talking about, get this, 12 pounds. That's the weight Huck recorded for a single hailstone he saw in the region. Can you even imagine that? A 12-pound chunk of ice falling from the sky. It sounds like something out of a myth, but it just shows you the raw, unbelievable power of the climate they were up against. So after 18 months of this, of freezing, starving, dodging bandits and blizzards, they finally saw it. Lhasa. They had made it. They were two of the very first Westerners to ever step foot inside the sacred, forbidden city. This was it. The moment everything had been leading up to. And that's the big question, isn't it? After all that, what did they find? What was this place that was guarded so fiercely from the rest of the world? What was it actually like to be there, inside the walls? What they found was a city that was way more politically complicated than they probably imagined. It was basically a balancing act between two huge powers. On one hand, you had the Tibetan regent, who was the spiritual and local ruler, who compared him to the Pope in Rome. But watching his every move was the Chinese ambassador, a guy named Qi Shen, who held the real imperial power. It was like having a foreign general parked in the Vatican. Two powers, one city, and a whole lot of tension.
And the city was just dominated by religion on a scale that is really hard to wrap your head around. I mean, look at these numbers. In just 3 of the monasteries they saw, there were 7,500 lamas. The whole city was basically one giant religious institution, this incredible hub of Buddhist learning and faith.
And while they were there, they got to learn about one of the most secret rituals in all of Tibetan Buddhism, how a new Dalai Lama is chosen. And it's not an election, it's a search. Lamas go out looking for infants who show incredible signs of wisdom. And the final test for the chosen child? He has to pick out religious items that belong to him in his past life. It's just amazing. Now, Huc and Gabbett didn't get to stay in Lhasa very long, but the story Huc wrote about their journey, that left a mark that would last for 100 years, and it completely shaped how the West saw this mysterious part of the world.
Now, here's a really important thing to understand about Huc's book. It's not a dry, day-by-day log of events. His own editor called it an artistic creation. He wasn't making things up, but he was shaping the story, making it exciting, giving it a narrative. The cold, hard fact is that they were kicked out by that Chinese official, Qi Shen. But the story he told was so much bigger than that.
And by doing that, he basically helped invent a whole new style of writing. His book became one of the most famous travelogues ever. For generations of people in Europe and America, Huc's book was Tibet. It painted this unforgettable picture of a magical, spiritual land hidden from the rest of the world. And this really gets to the truth of it. Their dream of setting up a mission in Lhasa, it didn't happen. It got crushed by politics. The Chinese ambassador, Qi Shen, just saw them as a threat. He couldn't have 2 Europeans wandering around seeing how things really worked in this super important territory. So he just had them marched right out of the country. End of story.
So in the end, we're left with this fascinating idea, which his editor, Paul Pelliot, summed up perfectly. The book is so powerful, so true, precisely because it's not obsessed with every little fact. Hudik captured the feeling, the spirit of the journey, in a way a simple list of facts never could. The story he told was, in a way, truer than the simple truth.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. Huc and Gabbett walked into a blank spot on the map, a world nobody they knew had ever seen. Today, there are no blank spots. Every inch is mapped by satellites. So I want to ask you, do you need an unknown land to have a real adventure, to really discover something? Or is it more of a state of mind that maybe, just maybe, we can still find today?